Hey everyone, welcome to Handing the Shame Back, a show dedicated to adult survivors of child sexual abuse here in New Zealand and out across the world. We know the numbers are huge. We know that online exploitation of children and sextortion is growing. And we also know there's a great many of us walking around as adults who carry the scars. So this show is dedicated to all of you, and so you know you have a safe place to land and you're never alone. As with all shows, there is a trigger warning, and that is simply because I don't want you feeling upset or anxious watching this. If for whatever reason you do feel triggered, please stop, go to the show notes below, and you'll be directed to some resource and support. I have another amazing survivor with me today, and she's all the way from Kansas over in the States. I love saying the name Kansas. Anyway, her name is Cadence. She is a survivor. She is a poet. She is an advocate. And welcome to the show, Cadence.
Hi, thanks for having me.
Well, it's awesome that you're here, and thank you for having the courage to share with us your story of child sexual abuse, simply because one thing you may share could help our incredible survivor family watching. One thing. So, no pressure. No, I'm joking. So, welcome to the show. And as with all shows, it's usually easier to start at the beginning. So, I guess as much or as little as you're comfortable to share, yeah, would like to know, what went on for you, and yeah.
Okay, yeah. So my story starts a little bit before I do. My father, he was an addict and he was a dealer. He ended up at a drug deal gone wrong and was murdered 3 months before I was born. This left my mom obviously trying to figure out how to be a single mom and bury him while still pregnant. With that comes, its own trauma. So when she moved across the street from the family. And she was mowing the lawn one day, and this family invited her over. They sent their boys out to go mow the lawn. My mom had no idea that this woman would be as predatory as she was. So they became close friends. She ended up being our godmother. And over the years, she had groomed us. I don't remember exactly when the abuse started taking place, but my first memory was 3. That day, it's kind of etched in my memory forever. It was at a family barbecue, and she had called us inside, me and another sibling, and the sibling went first. They went outside, and then I came back in, and she had coached me to say that that my brother was abusing us, and what she was doing is she was actually setting up and orchestrating to keep the real person who was abusing us, their hands clean. And she also abused us to cover the tracks of her father who was actually abusing us. This ended up going to a court case, and my brother was removed from the home, and he had to go to juvenile for a while and then foster care. During that time and after that, I was scapegoated by my family because I was the reason that my brother was taken out of the home. And the abuse continued even after he was removed from the home. During the court case, I was really failed kind of by the system because I was so ashamed I couldn't speak about it. And I was also told not to speak about it. She had brainwashed me to tell the truth, quotes around that. But it was a false truth that she had made up, that she coerced me to say. And it was very programmed into me. And it was only a few sentences. and that was all I kind of had to go on. And so they couldn't get me to talk. So they just saw, a kid that had all the symptoms of abuse and only one person being blamed. So they kind of just went with that and took it for what it was. I was 3, so I couldn't really advocate for myself or, make a whole bunch of sense. um, and so, yeah, that's kind of what ended up happening. I don't remember when the abuse stopped. I do know that he died when I was about 10 or so, I want to say. The Her father that was abusing us. She continued to groom us well after that, though. She had this weird obsession with the girls in the family being abused and then blaming it on other family members that or friends of families that was outside of the family. I don't know if anyone just didn't see this pattern. I know I did as a child, or if anyone just refused to stop it. But 2018, she had proclaimed that another child was being abused by someone else, and I feel a little bit ashamed that I didn't stand up and say something, but I did stand up. I took my husband's hand and I left the door and I never went back.
So can I ask you, and thank you so much for your courage and sharing, and hello, beautiful survivors. I hope you're all doing well today. Um, when you say that she continued to groom you, was there then someone else that was abusing you, or do you mean she was continuing to groom you to keep saying that it was your brother?
So yes, to keep saying that it was my brother.
Yeah.
She never let me, and I quote this, forget it. But also she just, and I want to say she groomed me, but it was more like sexually exploitive. Like she wanted to see our bodies and she
Oh,
wanted us to tell us the mechanics of sex and
oh,
whatnot.
okay. Did she actually sexually abuse you herself?
Yes, to cover the tracks of her
Mhm.
father. So she did that just in case that there was a medical investigation, so to speak.
Okay. So it wasn't just her father.
Yeah, no, it wasn't just her father.
Okay. Oh my goodness. The manipulation and the lying and the grooming.
Yeah, and she continued that in kind of every other, I mean, because in another aspect, she was like a second mom to us. She fed us, she clothed us, she gave us Christmas gifts, other gifts, when there was fights and stuff at my home, or the abuse got too bad, she would open up her home to me to stay if I needed to. And so it was like she knew how to beat down my fragmented kind of sense of self, but also knew how to create this false sense of belonging just enough to keep me there.
Yeah. Just excellent at grooming and manipulation. And
Correct.
and are you able to share your home living with your mum? What was that environment like for you?
Well, like I said, I was scapegoated, so I was just I wasn't necessarily blamed for everything. I don't want to paint it as there was no good times because there were. It was just very complicated as well. I knew my mom cared about us, but I also knew she was extremely overwhelmed. My mom never took care of herself. So that kind of my mom did have favorites and my brother was her favorite. He was adopted, so that was her chosen child. He was the oldest and he was the only boy. So for me to have been the cause of him leaving the home, I was severely punished for that growing up. Um, I I was left alone a lot at home to take care of myself, probably from about the age of 6. I learned to cook, clean very early on. Um, my sister was kind of ended up being like the mom of the family. She was even the mom of my mom. So the house dynamic was all over the place. It did not make a lot of sense, which it did not enrich our mental lives at all. There was a lot of physical and emotional and verbal abuse that did happen in that home. I rarely talk to my mom. I do sometimes, but I don't have a lot of communication with my family.
I understand that. It's really hard when you've been put in the position, not only have you been abused, you've been so manipulated that had you even tried to share with your mum who the real abuser was and how it was all being led through her best friend, your godmother. Um,
Yeah,
yeah, just so many factors in there.
yeah, it was definitely a lot to handle, and it's still tough to navigate. I'm doing a lot better. My mom knows the truth. Everybody knows the truth as in my family,
How
as
did
far as
that
I
come
know.
about? How did that come about?
In 2017, so it took a while.
Yeah.
um, I had to gain a lot of courage because the hatchet had been buried, so to speak. It was part of our normal lives. And I really, as a scapegoat, I was constantly walking on eggshells. I was not trying to make any kind of new news happen. I did not want to unearth things that had been buried. I was incredibly scared. But what really just like was circulating in my mind that led me to say the real truth was I just felt so horrible for my brother. I mean, he lost his childhood, you know, like being falsely accused of something, and that wasn't fair to him. And I just felt horrible like that for my whole life, that I was the cause of that. He also had issues with alcoholism and whatnot, and I thought I was the cause of that. So it was really hard, but I am glad though that I did. I wish I did do it sooner, but everything happens when it's supposed to.
And, give yourself some grace. You're amazing. You were a child and you were so manipulated. It all
Yeah,
happened so young. You had no power. You had no
right.
ability to understand it, let alone make sense of it and do something about it. Um,
Yeah.
and it's not like the adults around you potentially would have believed you anyway. So
That that
yeah,
is very true.
don't be too hard on yourself. If you think back to you as a little one, you got no power, you have no authority.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
your brother, what was that kind of reconciliation like for you and him?
He didn't know what to say. He had actually kind of pushed it out of his memory. So that kind of made me feel bad for even bringing it back up. But he took it well. He let me know like, hey, I'm more concerned about you. Like, that's a lot. That's heavy. Like you're a victim in this too. And I understood that. It was just a lot for me to wrap my head around. That was really the only time that we've since talked about it. It's still not talked about. I'm still not allowed to talk about it with them. Um,
He doesn't want you to, or it's too hard for him, or
I think it's too hard from him.
yeah,
I don't think he can talk about it. I think he still has a lot of shame around it,
yeah.
even though he has no reason to. I mean, he did nothing wrong.
That's a huge weight for you and a huge weight for him. And there
Hmm.
is only one responsible person for all of that pain and suffering, and it's not
Yeah,
you.
right.
It's that woman that decided to control you, manipulate you, and have you. behave in certain ways to meet her needs and
Hmm.
those around her. It's hard though, Cadence, as a child when you think about it, to be able to even understand what's going on, except that it wouldn't have felt right and you wouldn't have known what to do.
Yeah. So when like the false truth, I knew what the difference between a truth and a lie was because that was hammered into me very young. And so I knew I was like, again, I want to quote it. I knew I was lying when she made me tell this false truth, but I also knew I had to do what I was told. Um, so it did, like, obviously there's lasting effects. That was, I've been in therapy for a long time now, about the last 4 to 5 years. So I'm totally in a different space, in a headspace, but I can look back and understand um, kind of where I was throughout all the phases of childhood. And I knew what was wrong and what was right, but I also knew that I was being told by an adult to lie. So if an adult is telling you to do it, it must be the right thing to do.
100%. I mean, you
Yeah.
don't, you're little. The conditioning for children today even is do what you were told.
Right.
Respect the adults around you, listen to them.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, so that's big. And then of course you're saying you're not quite sure when the abuse ended, but she carried on grooming you.
Yeah.
What age was she in your life until?
Yeah. So 2017 or 2018 was the last time that I've ever seen her.
Okay.
Yeah.
And do you believe she had continued abusing you until you were kind of had left home, or may not
Oh,
be the
so
end of it? Yeah.
no, so it dwindled little by little as I was aging. I would say as far as like the manipulation and the other types of abuse, that never stopped until I left. I mean, she's still quite, I think manipulation is a part of her identity now. um
Yeah.
so that type of abuse that never really stopped until I left. And once I left, then that's almost kind of when the healing began. Because then I could kind of start looking back and seeing all these patterns.
Well, well, it's and look at what you've been able to emerge from, and amazing
Yeah,
woman that you are today.
thank you.
Did you feel at all that you may have tried to tell your mum or anyone around you what was really going on? Or
So there was one time I wanted to, and this was actually my godmother, one of her sons, made an inappropriate gesture at me, and I think I was in middle school or I think I was in the high school actually, maybe early high school, and I went to tell her, and sh I did tell her what he did, and she was just like, "Well, did you tell your godmother?" And I'm like, "No, like how could I?" And she was just like, "Oh, okay, I'll talk to her." And once like I knew that kind of vibe of this isn't gonna, nothing's gonna happen, nothing's gonna come from this, then I knew that I could never tell her the truth about my brother. And I also felt like if I did tell her the truth that my brother didn't do this, I would have probably gotten a lot more trouble.
wow, it just so challenging. Can
Yeah.
it, and obviously for you, you'd learnt fairly young that you were going to be blamed if whether you were telling the truth or not. So you became scapegoated, and
Yeah. So when my mom finally found out, it was just a couple of years ago, actually, when I told her. Um, and she was like, "Oh, well, I knew he never did it," talking about my brother.
Okay.
And that was kind of it. That was the end of it. And it wasn't really about, hey, like I was
Okay.
still
Yeah.
still, sexually abused here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, just for amazing survivors watching, as you think about this and listening to Cadence speak, how many of you can relate to the fact that you're scapegoated because you're trying to survive the abuse, but also sometimes because you are a truth teller or a whistleblower, and as children we don't have, or you didn't have any power or autonomy. So, as you can see, it's very difficult to suddenly find confidence and courage as a child to keep trying. That won't happen. And so often it's when we're adults, as Cadence, you've kind of alluded to, as you got older, you were maybe 2017, 2018, able to start to make it right for you, for your brother, for the family, actually just for the the reality and the impact of truth, because
Hmm.
it's powerful healer truth. So,
Yeah.
what would you say has helped you? Once those 2017, 2018 left, those years were finished. What has kind of helped you once you were able to start disclosing?
So my son was born in 2019, and that triggered a lot, was bubbling up, a lot of memories. Immediately got myself into trauma therapy about 2021 when I couldn't handle it anymore. And I'm like, hey, all this happened. They got me in right away. I started doing EMDR, and which kind of made it worse before it got better. um, but that and the realization that there's nothing wrong with who I am as a person, that there was something wrong with a lot of other people that did this. And this was done to me. It's nothing that I did wrong.
And you're speaking survivor language here, so just want to affirm what you're saying, because how often is it that we hold on to this um, sense of guilt or responsibility?
Right. And then it gets so ingrained into you that it affected so many aspects of my life. I was ashamed of existing.
Yeah.
I was never the person to, raise my hand. And if I did, even if I was right, I still felt shame that I even spoke,
Yeah.
because yeah, it was a process.
Well, and
um,
you groomed very well,
yeah.
you conditioned so hard that opening your mouth would not have been a safe thing for you to do.
Yeah, in any aspect, it was a lot. But I just, to this day, it's hard. It's still hard. It's hard right now, but I do it messy and I do it scared. I just keep doing it, and so far it's getting a little easier. I look back and I think of all the things that I have done, and I'm like, whoa, who is that?
And I just so honored to have you here with me today.
Thank you. Thank you.
It's, it's messy, it's hard, it feels like sometimes you're taking a few steps back, but actually, in the courage to speak, you're handing the shame back more and more and more, because
Yeah.
it never belonged to you. And it's just about releasing all of that and knowing you're not alone. We all believe you, and we have a growing community of survivors who do. So never doubt, never doubt. Um,
Yeah.
yeah.
And I know the more I do talk about it, the more empowered I feel, the more I self-reflect, the more empowered I feel. I started with our sexual assault crisis center. And I got into their speakers bureau, and they have this project called Project Aware, where we go into elementary schools and speak to children about, good, safe touch, bad touch, safe adults, tricky adults, even confusing touch. Oh, so if a kid doesn't
Good.
know if it was good
Yeah.
or bad, they knew who they can talk to about it, to see if, like, hey, this made me feel uncomfortable, but I don't know if it was okay or not.
Yeah. And that's so
So
powerful. So here you are turning the wheel 360. So
for
tell
sure.
what else helped you? You started doing therapy, you started trauma therapy, you began EDMR, MDR, and what else did you do that was partly instrumental in your healing journey?
So I did have a pretty big slip about it was just a year that the other day, February 28th, it was a year ago. I was so overwhelmed with not only my trauma, but just the effects of it, and the overwhelm of life, and everything was just piled on me. I ended up kind of just having to go into inpatient. Well, when I got there, there was no beds, and they offered me group therapy, and I went, and that did skyrocketed my healing. That is where I came to the realization that there was nothing wrong with me as a human, and that I was okay to be me, and I don't need permission to be me. Um, and just having that realization, the therapist there recommended the book by Mark Manson, the Subtle Art of Not Giving an F. And I read it, and that book changed my life as well. So I would say those things are what really skyrocketed me into healing and patience with myself. And just kind of finding out where the fear in me lies, and going up to it and walking through it instead of running away from it.
Yeah, yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah,
Yeah. No, that group therapy is so powerful, isn't it?
it is. It is. I can't thank it enough. I want to go back and just tell them, like, how much um they did for me, because it was truly amazing.
It's so cool. Do you, what are you doing now as an adult? I know off here we talked a tiny bit about poetry. Tell us about your poetry and your work and what you're involved in.
Yeah, so weekly I go to an underground poetry club that they have here, and that's where I started. And I was able to write my first poetry book, and it is a poetic memoir about my healing journey, and it's called My Demons and Me, an
Wow.
alchemist's journey. Yeah, and that kind of it starts with me going into group therapy, and then just kind of it walks you through my emotions and my healing since then. Over this past year, I actually published it New Year's Eve.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow, that's so cool. And how apt, New Year's Eve.
Yeah.
And where can we purchase the book? Are you able to tell us? We'll put the
Yeah,
links in as well, but if you wouldn't mind telling us as
for
well.
sure. It can be purchased on Amazon and Barnes and Noble. Walmart.com, I think it's on there. And there are a couple of other sites that are on. I know it's eBay, and then you can purchase directly from Ingram Spark as well.
Oh, awesome. That's so cool. Well done. Well done.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
And what do you do? Are you working as well? Like, what do you do with
So
your?
I'm a stay-at-home mom for
Yeah.
my little guy. I love spending time with him. He's so fun. He's 5 now. But I volunteer at MOXA, which is the Metropolitan Organization Countering Sexual Assault. And like I said, I would with their Speakers Bureau. I just started with them, so I haven't done too much with them, but I'm excited to really dive in and do as much as I can.
That's pretty exciting.
Yeah.
And just who you'll be helping through that is
Hmm.
you just don't know who's going to be in the audience.
Right.
It's a thing. Hey, and so for you, when you think about the work you do and you think about how you've evolved and come through all of that, are there any ideas or recommendations you would make to our amazing family of survivors watching who, might be thinking, oh, I wouldn't mind trying something different, or I'm struggling at the moment? What would you recommend if I could ask you?
I would say to really get in touch with the part of you that was silenced.
Mhm.
Listen to it and speak for it. I think that at the end of the day, that might be the one thing that really helped me was getting to know the part of me that was silenced.
That's really powerful.
Thank you.
Yeah, yeah. It can be quite scary or daunting, I can imagine.
Oh, for sure. It is probably one of the scariest things that I have ever done. But I would say it was worth it.
Yeah, yeah. That's pretty awesome. Are there any modalities you would recommend? I know you've personally experienced great benefits from group therapy. Any
Mhm.
any kind of practical recommendations like that you may have or that you think would benefit?
Um, Meditation, I love doing that. Taking myself on dates, getting to know myself. I feel like a lot of times for us survivors, we just end up being a shell of ourselves, because who we are in that moment was taken from us.
Yeah,
And so getting connected with that person and really understanding them, and knowing who they are and getting reconnected with who your essence is, and learning to be yourself again. I think that that's the real crux of it.
yeah, yeah. Because that part is often hidden away, and
Right.
we've bought into the shame and the guilt and the ownership
Mhm.
or accountability of anything bad that happened must have been because we were bad.
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah.
so yeah,
And one thing I've learned that really ruminates in my brain now is anxiety is a liar. I know I've dealt with anxiety my whole life because of this, and um, when I learned that anxiety was a liar and that I just had to do anything opposite than what my anxiety was telling me, oh, my life went leaps and bounds in the right direction.
so can you give us some examples of that? I think that's really exciting what you're saying, actually.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, so I mean, I always loved poetry, but I was too scared to even do it. Write it on paper. I was afraid that it would get seen. Um, so I guess that kind of goes hand in hand with is to allow yourself to be seen too. Um,
Hmm.
but yeah, I would hide it. I would do it in my head even like, but I would never put it out there for anyone to even possibly see. I was just too scared. But then I started writing it and I would share it with my husband, and he was like, "Hey, I think you should find, an outlet like to actually go out and speak that."
Wow.
And I was just like on a stage, what are you? No, you're crazy. You're crazy.
Yeah.
And he kind of convinced me, and I went and I found it. And I'm like, okay, I found one. I'm just going to go watch though. And I got really scared. And anytime I felt anxiety, I recognized it for what it was and I pushed past it.
That's so, wow, that must have been really scary
Oh, it
and
was scary.
exhilarating. And
Yeah, and it is. I mean, right now I'm terrified and excited at the same time, but I'm doing it.
yeah, well, you're doing great. You're doing
Thank you.
amazingly well. And it really helps our survivor audience because not everyone is at the extreme end of healing. Not
Right.
everyone's at the very beginning of healing or recovery
Hmm.
healing. And so it's really important we have survivors like you who are somewhere in the trajectory of the beginning to the end. And it's really important because it's not linear. And people sometimes say to me, oh, well, just doesn't it just get better over time? No, you can be triggered tomorrow.
Yep. I have a poem that says just like that. Like healing is not linear. And just one trigger can have you falling back down and crashing out right on that therapy couch.
Yep. So, are you able to read a poem to us? I think that would be a lovely way to
Yes,
end
I
our show.
actually I
If,
have one that I
if you're
recently
comfortable.
yes, sure. I have one that I recently just wrote, and it's called The Story of My Life. And it goes like this. I don't know how to start this poem. Nothing seems quite right. It seems like this reoccurring theme. Story of my life, am I right? If my life were a story, though, the words would be probably illegible and incomprehensible to anyone but its creator. I mean, it hardly makes sense to the pen. How could it to the paper? The eraser smirks would be all that remains of mistakes that I would rather be forgotten, and my notes of reflections would be written in the margins, and the arrows pointing to new directions and marking anything that's in need of rearranging. Of course, there'd be an overflowing wastebasket of crumpled balls of paper. You'd toss one more and you'd watch it tumble to the floor. Unfortunately, that's all that's left to show of missed goals and disturbed flow. But it's rough around the edges essence. Now that's a mark of authenticity. That's its personality. I mean, yeah, it's disorganized and messy, but yet somehow scrappy work seems absolutely necessary. I mean, a work in progress is progress nonetheless, even if it's mid at best. I've never been great at English or writing, and if I'm honest, I don't know how I passed. But one thing I've learned, anything worth doing is worth doing at least half-assed. I know at first glance it may look bad, but then again, you can't edit a rough draft you don't allow yourself to have.
Wow. Wow.
It's Thank you. I really
Powerful.
took wow, thank you. Yeah, I was that came about. That was inspired because I was talking to my husband and he had said he messed something up and I'm like, "No, babe, you didn't mess anything up. You can just, try again." And he was like, "Well, I don't know how you can just do that." And I told him I was like, "Well, that's life. It's
Wow.
just about trying again." And I was like, it's like a rough draft. Uh, you just got to edit it until it's right. And then I was like, hey, that's a poem. I'll be right back.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah.
Hey, Cadence, can you is there any final words from you before we start to close out, please?
I don't know. I'm not really sure, but I would just still encourage anyone to find their inner selves because this world is a lot cooler when everybody is who they're meant to be and not how everybody just thinks they should be.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's really awesome. Thank you. Can you please stay right there? Don't sign off. Hey, audience, really inspirational. Wasn't that poem amazing? So, Cadence shared a story which, you know, is pretty harsh on her as a young girl, and not just the weight of the abuse, but the weight of being scapegoated because she was made to lie about someone who wasn't the perpetrator. And that's tough. It's another layer of responsibility and guilt, which a 3-year-old should never have had. And just moving on from that, she talked about several things and really important things that we as survivors can learn from. And there's a couple in particular I just want to share with you that touched me. She said, Get in touch with the part of you that was silenced. Getting to know the part of you that was silenced is so powerful and invaluable. So I'd encourage you to think about that because we did, we had to shut that part of us down in a way. So that's a real gift there. And another thing she said, she didn't realize it, was quite cool, which I love, and I want you encourage you to think about it too. Taking yourself on dates, getting to know you, getting to know that beautiful part of you, I think is really important too. So, as always, beautiful ones, it's such an honour to bring this to you and to serve you through handing the shame back. I see you, I stand beside you, and I believe you.